Next we have our set of triangle trimmers.
These tools will help you make your patchwork more accurate.
You can fit triangles to squares and block parts perfectly.
They'll help you achieve precise patchwork points.
You'll trim your triangle tips before you sew.
So let's take a look at that with a square and a square unit.
The square and a square unit is always tricky because you have to sew a triangle to each side of that square, and it's hard to know just how to line that up. You may think you're doing okay on the first one, but by the time you get around there, it's not square anymore.
And I start losing my seam allowance around the outsides. What happens to me?
Right. So in order to determine the trim, like, for example, which of the two trimmers to use, either the pink one or the blue one, it's important to sort of audition your patchwork piece so you know what you're trying to get to.
And this is really key.
It is. So I'm going to put my two fabrics together the way they would be when I sew, and what I want to do is trim this triangle so that those straight edges line up perfectly.
We're going to lop off the little tips.
Right.
So the triangle lines up
Right.
exactly with the square.
Right. So if I auditioned my pink triangle trimmer here, I can immediately see this is not the right one to use.
It's going to be going the wrong way.
It's the wrong way. So let's try the blue one. And here's a little tip. The blue one is the one you're going to use the most often.
About 90% of
Right.
the time.
So I slide this up here and I can see, wow, that's great. If I trim my triangle tips that way, they're going to line up perfectly with my square.
Now each time Marianne has lined a trimmer up with that triangle, she has put the longest side of the trimmer and aligned that with the longest side of the fabric triangle.
And this works out great because you can see with my blue trimmer, the grain line that's printed right on the ruler matches up with the grain line on that triangle.
And we have a little icons on the trimmer that kind of show that basic trim that you would use for a square and a square unit. So
I'm going to
you're
trim.
going to stack up your
Right.
triangle
I think
so
I'll-
you can
I'll
trim
do
a whole
all at
pile
once.
of them at once,
Okay, I
because
wanna-
these are all four going to be the same.
I'm going to stack them up real nice here. Another thing to point out about the trimmer is it's not a ruler. We're not measuring these pieces, so
Right.
this triangle that I'm going to trim might be much smaller than my trimmer, or it might be much larger than my trimmer.
You're just lining up the two sides. You put the long side of the trimmer on the long side of your triangle, and then put that into a corner so that the edges of the triangle line up with the edges of your trimmer.
What I like to do is use the big cutter, and I'm just going to like
Just do a
chop
little
through
squash.
there. So those are out of the way. And the neat thing about getting rid of these now,
You don't have to trim them later.
you don't have to trim them later. So I'm going to turn my trimmer, or just scoot it over, I should say, over to the other side, chop through those, and now when I put this piece on my square, it lines up perfectly.
It's going to fit perfectly. I'll get it sewn on exactly right when I do that.
That's great. Okay, and we just continue. I usually add opposite sides and then opposite sides, and you're going to have a square unit like this one right here.
It's very neat. That certainly simplifies that process. Another patchwork unit that is helpful to have the triangles trimmed is this cute little unit that's called Brave New World. And it has three shapes. It has a large triangle,
A square.
a square, and two smaller triangles. Now, we'll start by joining these pieces together. And when I flip this triangle over to begin sewing it on, you can see that the edge of my triangle is going to extend beyond the square that's underneath.
Okay.
So it's helpful if I trim that triangle. If I start with the blue one, I'll see that that will give me the wrong trim.
Okay.
So this is an occasion where I'm going to use the pink trimmer.
Okay.
One or the other is generally going
Right.
to always work.
See, that's perfect.
So
You can
that's gonna
instantly-
be perfect.
You can instantly tell that that's the right trimmer.
So what I've done then is, and you can, once you know what you're up to here with this, you can trim whole stacks of triangles at the same time. But just to make this quicker, I'm just going to trim one. All right, now this triangle would exactly fit onto my square. And I have a piece now where I have done that, and I have sewn that and pressed that piece.
Okay.
So let's open that out. That would be our first step.
And that,
And I'm going to bring that in.
so we can see where we are.
And our next step is going to be to add the second triangle onto that first unit.
So let's audition that piece.
Right. So when we flip it over, we can see that we've got the tip of the triangle hanging off the edge. I would like it to be lined up
Exactly.
even with that.
Okay, so let's audition our trimmers. Let's try the blue one.
Long-sided trimmer, long-sided triangle.
And I picked the right one first.
You did, bingo.
Okay.
90% of the time it's going to be the blue one.
Okay, so I'm just going to bring it over here. And of course, like Liz is saying, we'd ordinarily trim whole stacks of them at one time. But I'm going to just trim the one on this unit. I'm just sliding my triangle trimmer into the triangle so that the adjacent sides of the trimmer are lined up with my fabric. Cut the triangle off. And of course, I'd cut a bazillion off at once if I were doing this for real.
Piles of them.
Okay. And then our piece goes right here.
When you flip that over, it's going to be very obvious that that fits. Now, if you've accidentally trimmed something wrong,
Which could happen.
Oh, we've run out of ones, and we have, well, this is our last triangle that we have left.
It's the only one we have.
And we want to fit it on here, and we don't know, it's not trimmed the right way.
It was already trimmed the other way.
Right. So it had a pink trim to start with.
Right.
So we can correct it by doing a blue trim on it, and we create what's called an engineered corner.
Right.
Yep, you need to kind of get it lined up good there.
Oop. I'm just not in position. There we go.
Right.
I think I got it off. Okay.
You create an engineered corner, and that engineered corner will automatically fit on any situation. So if you make a mistake, you can fix it by trimming once with one trimmer and trimming the second time with the other trimmer.
You've never ruined your triangle. There are lots of uses. We've just begun to play with them ourselves, and we hope you enjoy using these trimmers to make your patchwork more accurate.